right, seeing none, that moves us to the approval of the minutes of the May 8th, 2023 board meeting. Do I have a motion? Matt, or Mr. Hogan?
Good. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 8th, 2023 board meeting.
Do I have a second? Mr. Scully, or I saw Mr. Scully first. It's all right. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. That moves us to public participation. I understand we have 3 speakers tonight. And while, before Ms. Taylor announces your name, I'd just like to say that the board welcomes and encourages public participation. We respectfully ask that you adhere to the procedures provided in Board Policy BEDH, public participation at meetings. Your comments should be limited to 3 minutes and must remain on either the topic noted on your sign-in form or a listed agenda item. Questions asked during public participation will be handled in accordance to Board Policy BEDH. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first speaker is Dina Burley to speak about budget concerns.
Always a short person, I'm so sorry. So my name is Dina Burley, and I'm here tonight to advocate against raising the millage. As mentioned in the last board meeting, my family would be one of those ones that would be minimally impacted by an increase, at least one would reasonably think. I mean, we own our own home, we drive reasonably priced cars, we don't have a business. But we do support our local businesses. We're proud supporters of local businesses. We know many families in our church body that run their own businesses. These increases are going to be passed on to them. Very tight margins. It's going to be passed on to us, really. We're talking about the prices that we're paying. And this is on top of the rate of inflation that we're all experiencing. Most employees in corporate America have not seen their income rise as quickly as inflation has risen. I'm sure that you guys have also seen that as well. Reasonably priced cars. Even though we still drive, we're one of those families that drive it till he dies. As of December 2019, I'm well aware that one person who is slightly distracted can prematurely take out my car. When I replace that car, I'm going to be paying at least $5,000 to $10,000 more than I would have 5 years ago. Additional increases. That means the taxes associated with those cars are going to also be increased. One of my best friends is actually a current renter. Every year, her rent has increased by at least $100, at least. This year, it was $250. Increase for her rental house for her family of 3. How many families do we have here in D5 that are also renters? And what is the likelihood that that increase that the owner has isn't going to be passed on to those families who are renting those houses? I say it's probably infinitesimal. So what am I asking for you guys to do? Realize that the money that you're spending today is not your money. It belongs to all of us in your community. You have the option of pulling from the fund balance, and I say do it. Just wait. Give us time. We know that our community is increasing. We are building houses left and right. We know that businesses are increasing. What if our records are wrong and we actually don't need as much as what we need, as we're saying that we need? It's a possibility. As we mentioned last week, or the last meeting, once taxes are increased, it's very unlikely to go back down. So that's why I just want to take the time and just wait. Wait it out and see what happens. I also do want to mention that I am all for raising teacher pay, like 150% for raising teacher pay. So whatever happens tonight, I do want that to happen. But I also want us to do it responsibly. Thank you.
Brad Lewis is here to speak about classroom security.
Thank you for letting me talk. I wasn't aware I was going to even be able to do this. My company, Campus Safety Products, we have a classroom door lockdown system. We first presented it to Curtis Cannon about 3 years ago. And last year at the SED conference, he saw the updated version. He was very impressed with what he saw. and we've been trying to, I've been trying to get to do a demonstration for the board or whatever. But what it does, classrooms now, when they go into a shelter-in-place situation, I believe the standard procedure is to make sure the classroom doors are locked, get the students in a safe place of the room. And you may use furniture to back up doors, I don't know. Some schools do, some schools don't. The door, the biggest problem is when a armed intruder gets past metal detectors, cameras, and so forth, and they get right to the classroom door. That door handle, that door locking system, can be easily disabled by several rounds of gunfire. Our product, which is called RhinoWare, will keep that door from being breached, keep the kids, students safe in the classroom, providing the critical time for law enforcement to come and take care of the situation. And I'm just trying to get y'all to take a look at it. And that's it. We do get concerns when people say, well, we got a window right above the door lock. Nothing we can do about that. But they do have ballistic film that will prevent the window from shattering so nobody can reach their arm through it. SLED has seen it. Matter of fact, the captain of the SROs for Richland County, the new captain, has seen it. They love it. It is fire code compliant. There's no problem with the State Fire Marshal's office, as well as fire rated and ADA compliant as well. And that's my time.
Kim Murphy is here to speak about budget.
Good evening, and I do want to preface this too. I do support the teachers getting an increase in salary. As you probably know, I've been involved with District 5 and the budgeting process for many years, and unless you have financial experience, it may seem overwhelming to you. But based on the information provided in your board packet that we see today, there's a good bit of information still missing to help you make a good decision or to justify such a high millage rate increase, which would increase our taxes and bring in also a large amount of new money for the district to spend for the next several years. Basic information, the assessed value of all properties in the districts, past, present, and future, is not included. The millage rate is based on that critical number. I also don't see that student enrollment projections are included in the budget presentation. There has not yet been a bona fide enrollment study to know that student growth would lead to a tax increase. In fact, some surprising data that you may not have seen, since 2020, according to the official enrollment reports, the district is actually 22 students less than it was today than it was in 2020. We haven't grown since 2020. Yet option number 3, the lowest proposed budget in your packet, is an increase of $26 million more. And we have, again, a decrease of 22 students. Using the highest option, it's an increase of $33 million. I'd like to also point out that the presentation for option number 3, which is the lowest proposed budget, states that this is not a tax increase, no tax increase. That's not really an accurate statement. There is going to be a tax increase. Your taxes are going to increase. And there will be, even if the millage rate is not increased, because as Ms. Huddle stated at the last meeting, every year the assessed value goes up. When the tax rate, the millage rate, is applied to this, the district will bring in more money than the year before. So every year the base increases, so do your taxes. Such a large proposed millage rate increase, unfortunately, reminds me of previous boards, what they've done in the past. A year before a school board election or a bond referendum election, approve a large millage rate one year, then claim in the bond referendum year they didn't raise taxes and that they are fiscally responsible enough for the taxpayers to vote yes on a bond referendum. But they failed to mention that they inflated the millage rate so much the year before that they didn't have to have the election year or for the years to come. That's it.
Ms. Murphy, your time
Thank you
is up.
very much.
Thank you. All right, that moves us to our action agenda. Action as necessary or appropriate on matters discussed in executive session. Do I have any motions? Mr. Hogan.
Make the motion that we approve selected employment items shown in Exhibit A.
Do I have a second? Mr. Scully, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion carries 7-0. Do I have any additional motions?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan.
Make a motion that we move to approve Manley Garvin LLC to provide financial audit services for FY 2023 and procurement audit services for FY 2022 and FY 2023.
Do I have a second? Mr. Scully, any discussion?
I have a motion. I move to defer the motion until the first meeting after the administration has advertised the solicitation in South Carolina Business Opportunities and posted it on the district's online solicitations webpage.
Do I have a second? Ms. Barnhart?
I made this motion because to be honest, I don't trust the process that was used. And I think, if you go and you look the last 2 times, and I think pretty much if you went back and you could find the records, the auditor's always been advertised on the district's solicitations page. I know the last 2 times they were, and they were also in the South Carolina Business Opportunities, which is typical. I mean, if you look out there, you're going to see lots of school districts, lots of towns and counties. I don't trust the process because the first time this board ever discussed the potential of releasing the auditor was on May 8th. But we found out in our board packet that a solicitation was sent to some of these companies on April 25th, which was 2 weeks before we ever even discussed it. And so for that reason, I'd like to see us do the solicitation the way we always have in the past, put it out there, and if it ends up the same way, it ends up the same way. But if the argument is we don't have time, the last time we approved the auditor, I want to say it was in February. We didn't actually sign the contract with them until July. And so we have plenty of time to do this the right way between now and our next meeting.
Do I have any discussion on that? Mr. Satterfield?
Yeah, I did have a question. I was going to ask the question about the timeline on that. I noticed on some of those responses that their deadline for returning in their final report was at the deadline, at like the December 1st, I think. So this additional, how much additional time are we talking about, and how much longer? I mean,
Well, apparently the solicitation's already been written, so it could be put on our website tomorrow. And that would we have 2 weeks, I think, maybe 3 weeks. Our next meeting's not until June 22nd. So we would be able to approve an auditor at our June 22nd meeting.
June 12th.
Sorry, June 12th.
Do I have any other? Mr. Hogan?
I guess it's more of a question for Dr. Ross and/or Madison. Would a solicitation on the website, would that be enough time to come back with any responses for the June 12th meeting?
I mean, last time we went through this process, we only had 1 response, but I mean, we'll do whatever. We got these proposals because I instructed the CFO to reach out to the list.
Mr. Scully?
Yeah, I just want to confirm, Dr. Ross and Ms. Paul, was there anything regarding the process for the proposal as it is today that was out of line or incorrect? We're completely within the rules doing it the way we are proposing today.
Ms. Paul, according to the procurement, please outline like the process?
Yes, sir. So according to our procurement code, CPA firms are exempt from procurement, which would mean that they would be exempt from the solicitation process. We do have board policy DIE, and the administrative rule in there states that the superintendent will invite proposals. It does not say necessarily how, it doesn't lay out necessarily how the superintendent should invite those proposals. So what we did in this case was we actually made phone calls to invite these proposals. And then if they were interested or available to complete our audit services, then we did send the draft that we had come up with based on the same RFP that we submitted in February of last year. I will say that this is not, normally we do a full formal solicitation process, but due to the timing, did not feel that we had the time to do that in this case when we just lost our auditor.
Okay, so we're technically in line with board policy. The only question is that Ms. Huddle doesn't trust it, so I don't think that's sufficient.
Okay, Ms. Huddle?
I have a question. On April 25th, when it was sent out to all the auditors, why wasn't it also put on the website and on South Carolina Business Opportunities at the same time? If the goal was to get more people and to let the public know what we were doing, why wouldn't we have done that?
Well, Ms. Huddle, at that time, we had an existing auditor still on April 25th. So we would not be, I don't believe we would be allowed to do a formal solicitation in that same manner.
Okay, so we were allowed to do an informal solicitation without the board's knowledge, but we could put it on our website. I get it.
Maybe that's not the right term. I mean, I did discuss with our attorney and ask if this was the proper way to handle the situation, and he agreed that it was.
Mr. Hogan?
With, and this might be a blanket statement, but with other school districts or us in the past, is there a standard as to when typically the contracts are put together between a school district and a firm that's going to be representing them as far as that firm's capacity throughout the year?
Yes, sir. In my experience, normally the solicitation or invitation would go out in the February to March timeframe to get an auditor on board. When I did discuss this issue with several CPA firms in the state that are approved, they already had their fall and interim schedules in place and were not able to accommodate another district at that time.
I'm going to call for the vote on Ms. Huddle's motion. All in favor? All opposed? That motion, the secondary motion fails 5-2. Mr. Hogan's original motion to approve Manley Garvin, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries 5-2. Any other motions on executive session?
Yes, I move that the administration contracts with a certified forensic auditor to audit the procurement and payments to the vendor discussed in executive session, and the auditor present their findings to the board.
To the second? She seconded, Ms. Barnhart?
I mean, I think we discussed it. I think it's self-explanatory.
I'm going to just say that we received this motion right, 10 minutes before we came out here. I believe that the administration has requested the ability to address the question so that we can proceed accordingly. I'm not opposed necessarily to doing an audit on that, but I just, once I just saw that, so that's my thoughts. Does anyone else have anything? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor of Ms. Huddle's motion? 3. All opposed? 4. The motion fails 4-3. And that will take us to the next part of our agenda, action agenda, the second and final reading, approval of proposed revisions to board policy JQ, student fees, fines, and charges, Exhibit G.
Ms. Paul stands for any questions regarding second reading of our student fees, fines, and charges policy.
Do you need a motion for discussion?
Oh, do we need a motion?
Yeah.
We need a motion.
I'll make
Mr. Hogan?
Make the motion the board approve second and final reading, approval of proposed revisions to board policy JQ, student fees, fines, and charges. shown in Exhibit G.
Do I have a second? Mr. Satterfield, I saw your hand up. Okay. We need a second for the motion, for the discussion.
Sorry.
Mr. Scully, did you second the motion? All right, so the motion, so Mr. Satterfield, you have a question regarding the,
All right.
yeah.
I'm getting better at this. Yeah, I noticed, and I'm sorry I didn't notice this the first time, Dr. Ross and Ms. Paul. In the memorandum there, it says the district assesses fees, student fees to offset the cost of education and all that, but it also talks about an athletic and extracurricular participation. The policy doesn't address extracurricular and athletic participation. Do we have a separate policy specific for that, or do we have a formula? I know that I've had the discussion with a couple of parents, especially with the IRMO band, but you can take out any activity. Some of these things can get pretty costly, and I hate to exclude students or have students that say, well, I'd like to go be in the marching band, but I just can't afford it. My parents can't afford it. So is this something that we are addressing, Dr. Ross, or do we have another plan that I'm just unaware of?
Now, in terms of, let's take band specifically, we have the school fees and then we have booster fees. So I don't know if that's Ms. Miller or Ms. Paul want to respond to that.
I would have to look into it, to be honest, Mr. Satterfield. I know that we have a set athletic fee for the bands and all. I know, the instrument, things of that nature. But I do know that our schools work with individual students, and I don't know of a single case where the school has been aware that there was a financial need and that was keeping a student from an activity, and that need hasn't been met.
Well, I guess my concern is that, well, I had a lot of kids that were on free and reduced lunch, but they wouldn't tell anybody they were on free and reduced. They didn't want, it was a little bit embarrassing. It used to be when you went up to check out for your, with your lunch in the cafeteria, you either had a different card or there was something outwardly showing that you were on free and reduced lunch. And I just don't want to have kids that don't even bother to go out because mom says, I can't afford those fees. And I know that sometimes what booster clubs do is they front and then they tell the kids, all right, it's $60 a month or whatever it costs. And I don't know the answer. I know this is a tricky thing, but I know that students' success, what I've learned over the years, when they're involved with extracurricular activities, they're far more likely to be successful. They're less likely to get into trouble. They do much better academically. It's just a fact. They take ownership in their school. They feel a part of their school. So I don't know that we can address this tonight, but I just noticed that in the memorandum, and it sort of triggered something to me. I know that some of these camps that some of these kids go to are quite expensive. And I know that there are boosters out there, and Lord, we thank the good Lord for them to help these kids. But again, I don't know the answer, but I just thought I'd bring that up. I would just like to, I don't want any kid to not be a part of something because they just can't afford it.
And I appreciate that. When we look at the original, we had the free and reduced measure where it was based on your lunch. And there would be students who would not fill out the lunch card. There would be parents, you're aware of that would not fill out the lunch. And then we expanded it to pupils in poverty, which gave extra indicators, such as, is that family being served by, Medicaid or SNAP or TANF? So those extra indicators would allow the reduced or free status to happen. We had that expanded definition and did not include the free and reduced. So this is, I think, more expansive to cover those. But, it's still, you still have those if, any parent has ever done travel ball, that these costs to be involved are there. And we still have to find ways to get access for all. I think one of the things I'm looking forward to is the expanding of the community support services where intramurals and programs like that we can provide that do not have those exorbitant outside costs. One thing, too, that Mr. Puckett is working on, we talked about it this morning, is getting with all our booster clubs and getting a sense of what are these expenses beforehand, so that we know how to, so we have an understanding as a district, what are those total expenses, how are they being expended? They're different entities, but to make sure that we're aligned, so that we can ensure more access for all.
Any more questions regarding the policy? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the question. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Ms. Barnhart has stepped out.